Well, hi everyone. I am here with the Masterbooks Recipe for Homeschool Success Summit. My name is Jennifer White and I'm with Dr. Jennifer Rivera. So the two Jennifers are coming to you today to talk about sleuths and scopes. That was just a fun name that I came up with to help you learn about our two upper level science courses that are so unique to Masterbooks. And Dr. Rivera wrote one of them. She works at Answers in Genesis, as you can see on her shirt today, and just came back from a terrific trip we were talking about. So what we want to do today is learn from her about Intro to Forensic Science from a Biblical Worldview. That is not something many students get in public education or Christian education, but we are so excited to have that to offer to the Masterbooks family. And Dr. Rivera, please tell us a little bit about why you chose to write this and why it's so unique.
Yeah, so I'm actually a daughter of a forensic scientist. So I was raised in a home with forensic science. And every time I did a science project growing up, it had something to do with forensic science and went on to work in a crime scene unit. And so even today, I love forensic science. And I have taught forensic science to students for over 20 years now.
Wow.
And there was never a forensic science textbook that was available for students from a biblical worldview. And having taught in a wide breadth of different educational settings. I've taught in homeschool settings. I've taught in cohort settings. I've taught in what we call classical education. I've taught in a 5-day Christian school setting. I did student teaching in the public school. But there was no education curriculum out there about forensic science, through that biblical lens. And so God just really put that burn on my heart, and he said, well, why don't you do it? Right. So I did. And so I spent about 4 years developing this curriculum, giving a wide, I call overview of everything. I tried to include all, the main things that fall under forensic science. Forensic science is unique in that it does incorporate every scientific discipline that is out there. So there are over 20 disciplines in forensic science where a student can kind of become an expert if they choose to go into this field. So pretty much any type of science you love, you can be a forensic geologist, you can be, forensic anthropologist, you can be a forensic chemist, you can be a forensic toxicologist, a forensic medical examiner. So it doesn't matter what discipline it is, you put that word forensic in front of it, and there is some type of expert in that field. So this curriculum is unique, though, in that every single discipline, regardless of which one it is presented through a biblical lens, clearly showing that every single discipline in forensic science confirms what God's word tells us in his perfect, history book that he's given to us, which is the Bible.
Right. So let's talk about who this is for. I mentioned earlier it's for upper level high school students, and that's for a reason. So talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so this book is designed for, I like to recommend 11th and 12th graders really is the best age bracket for this, because we are talking about some sensitive subjects. It is forensic science. Sadly, forensic science is only necessary because of sin, right? In God's perfect creation, we didn't need forensic investigators. There was no death or disease or suffering. But now, because man chose to bring sin into God's perfect creation, we do now need that. But, God in his perfect wisdom put processes in place that allow us to use those techniques to then bring justice in his broken world. So I do feel like it does need to be a little bit older, high schoolers, to be able to understand the content and think about it critically and have the correct level of discernment that's necessary in forensic investigation.
Right. And a parent is going to know if their child is ready for that or not. If they have a sensitive heart and they can't take any kind of crime at all, or so it's a good idea to read through it. I want you to tell everybody a little bit about the first crime scene that you talk about in the book. I think that's one of the most fascinating things.
Oh, yeah. So I felt it was important to really set the stage and the tone for the book. And so the first two chapters do talk about, well, what is science? And, science is knowledge, and knowledge only comes from God, right? The Bible clearly tells us that. So we can't truly study science in the way God designed us to without using that as our foundation and starting point. So the very first case file, because each chapter does open with a real life case, right? So they're going to be reading about it, and they're going to learn techniques in that chapter that kind of point back to that particular case. Well, the first case that I chose to focus on was the crucifixion, right? Or the murder of a perfect person, right? A perfect man. And there was only one, Jesus Christ. And so I just felt it was important that, this was a murder. And we kind of set the tone for what we're going to be looking at in this book. And just, pointing back to, once again, Jesus Christ as the person who sacrificed all, right? So that we could then have salvation through him.
Wow. Just that alone makes me want to share it with everybody, because I just think that is such a unique way to learn the gospel, to understand the fall, to understand who Jesus is. And it's right there in the first chapter. And we recommend, if you're interested in this, we recommend you go to our Intro to Forensic Science product page, where you can download a free sample of the course so you can see this for yourself. So let's talk about who needs to take this, or who would want to take this. Is it just for somebody going to college? Is it just for fun? Why would a college track, somebody on their way to college, take it? Why would somebody who doesn't plan to go to college take it?
Right. So it's a great science course, I would say, for students who love science or don't necessarily love science so much. It kind of fits that niche, because not every kid's a science nerd, right? Like I was growing up. I always loved science, but not every kid does. But they do love investigation, and they are interested, right, in CSI. And most kids like to solve puzzles. And so I kind of like to think that's what forensic investigation is. You're working in a collaborative setting, of course, but you're pulling pieces of information, right? Hoping to put together that final puzzle that then is presented in the court of law. So if kids thoroughly enjoy gathering clues and kind of figuring out information and putting it all together, they're going to love forensic science. And I do recommend that students, it's good if they have chemistry, but they'll be successful in this course even if they haven't taken chemistry, because it is laid out in a way that is designed for students of all different learning levels. But for those kids who do love science, it's another great course, because it will hit all those different disciplines and kind of give you a broad overview from biology to geology, anthropology. It's going to hit all of those and kind of give you that overview, so that then when you enter college, maybe you start to see, hey, I really like DNA, right? Or hey, I really like document examination and handwriting analysis, right? Or I really like ballistics. So it kind of gives you that introduction, so that when you get into college, you can kind of maybe hone in a little bit or know more where your interests lie within that field of forensic science.
Absolutely. And just so I graduated from college in social work. So I had actually today, there might be a lot of forensics in social work if you think about it, but we didn't have it back then. But in life, because there is sin in the world, I've had to deal with forensic technology. I've had to have detectives in my life. And so I've been exposed to that. So somebody who isn't going into college to be in some sort of science forensic field can still really learn some life skills, critical thinking skills that will help them deal with sin in the world. Maybe not their own sin, hopefully not, but the world is full of people who are not honoring God. So I think it's critical that anybody take the course, so that you at least have a platform of information, a baseline of information, and you know enough to go look and learn more.
And I think one of the key things too is you start to learn to discern fact from fiction, right? And picking out relevant information that pertains to a specific topic, let's say, versus a lot of what we see in media is sensationalized. And so the book does go into that, right? When you are watching CSI TV or you're reading, articles or things like that, you need to keep in mind, all right, well, what's actually factual? And we do talk about that versus what has been definitely exaggerated, right? Because of our culture. So that is also, focused on the book, and that's critical to life as well.
And so many podcasts, people are listening to so many crime scene type podcasts that I think it would help as well, because the world is very interested and fascinated in the why and the what, and it can be thrilling, but the sensationalization of it is dangerous. So I'm excited for the masterbook students to have the real world information from God's perspective. And I'm so grateful to you. I'm grateful to your parents for the way that, God put you with parents who were into forensics. And so here you are helping the next generation with the same thing.
Absolutely. And I think another big thing I'd like to point out in the book is that it is going to hit not just forensic science, but it's also going to be focusing on a lot of the cultural issues that we see in the world today. So it will address biological sex and gender and
Mm,
what that is biblically. And it will address the famous Lucy fossil, right? And why we are not the result of molecules to man evolution, but how we can clearly see, even in anthropology and bones, that God designed us not only male and female, but that we're clearly created different from other mammals that we see in creation because we are image bearers of the creator God. So
right.
it's going to hit a lot of those, I say, cultural challenges that students are going to face and give them that biblical perspective and give them those answers to defend their faith.
Absolutely. I wanted to share just a few of the reviews of parents who
Mhm.
have taught this to their students or have provided this curriculum. Let's talk about that for just a second. Is this very independent learning style, or is it something that the parent teacher needs to be involved in a good bit?
It really depends on the family and the student's learning style. The lab manual is designed so that a student could pretty much pick it up and follow that lab and complete it themselves. But I
Mhm,
always feel learning is best if a parent does oversee those labs, right? And make sure
mhm.
the student is completing them correctly, because that's the only way they're really going to get the benefit of the lab to help their understanding of the curriculum that they just read and the information that they just read. So
Right.
application is important. I always say, please, 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 please do the lab manual with the textbook, because that's the only way you're really going to be able to get I would say, everything that is, you know, the full scope of the course is completing the labs as well.
Mhm. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but I had visitors in my home last year after this book came out. She was looking at all of my curriculum and everything on the shelf, and she said, "I'll get this back to you." Took your book home with her. That was the only one she chose. But, I mean, she's a school teacher in New Orleans, Louisiana, and that's a great place to know a little bit
Yes,
more about forensics.
yes. Mhm.
So I wanted to share a few of the reviews just so people can get an idea of what homeschool moms are saying about this course so that you know how it's working. So this is from Kathleen. She said students evaluate real case studies, analyze forensic science articles, participate in hands-on labs, and develop an understanding of how to view forensics through the lens of God's word. Scripture is woven throughout each lesson. There are labs and review materials to enhance understanding each concept. She said that this is a very captivating course to use regardless of what you plan on doing when you go into the workforce. And Becky, let's see where I was going to share with you. She has a long review, so I don't want to give all of it to you. I'm going to skip down here to Yulia. She said, beautifully done. I hope there's a Masterbooks Academy class created for this course, especially to guide through the lab parts. Are we working on that?
Yes, we are. So we've been recording the lecture part of those videos.
Mhm.
There's just a couple more that I need to do. And with each of those, there is a little bit explanation of the lab provided at the end to kind of help guide students as they go into the lab. So yeah, that is coming.
Wonderful. And just one last one. There are more than these. I'm just giving you a few glimpses. This is from Laurie. She says, I cannot stress enough how interesting this course is. It opens a whole field of science that one would not learn from your average school textbooks. Some examples are the history of forensic science, career options in the field, notable people, DNA, and how it's linked to the field, and so much more. So I'm so excited that people are loving the course. I'm thankful to you for writing it and providing it to this generation. And I look forward to hearing more about how people are enjoying this course in the future. Please, if you have questions about it, go to the Moms of Master Books Facebook group or the Master Books app where we can answer your questions. You can do a search with hashtags and search forensics or forensic science, and you can just post a question, and there are people there to help you. Dr. Rivera, thank you for this.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for your
Jennifer.
time. It's
Yes,
good
thank
to
you so
see
much.
you. We're so excited to join you online and to introduce you to Dr. Danny Faulkner. Dr. Danny Faulkner or Professor Danny Faulkner, either way works. He is here to talk to us about one of the courses that he has written for Masterbooks, and it's specifically for upper high school students, and it's called Astrophysics, or Introduction to Astrophysics. So welcome, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Faulkner.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Now tell us a little bit about your work, where you are right now, and what you do for your day job.
Well, I'm an astronomer. I've been doing astronomy all my life. It wasn't until I was a sophomore in high school that I realized that was my calling in life. And I went off to Bob Jones University and graduated with a math major, went to Clemson for a master's degree in physics, but I did a thesis in astronomy. Then I went to Indiana University, completed a master's and a PhD in astronomy. And I became a professor at the University of South Carolina, Lancaster, where I was for more than 26 years. I was a full professor. I was tenured. It was a great environment for me. I loved my job there. But I felt called in retirement to come do creation ministry full time. So a dozen years ago, I had an opportunity to retire a little bit early, and I took that opportunity. And I started here in January of 2013, working at the Creation Museum as a staff astronomer. I'm in the research department, but I also do outreach programs with the planetarium and with the with our telescopes and so forth. Do some speaking and writing, much writing as well. And one of the projects is the new astronomy textbook.
Absolutely, and just wow! I'm so excited that Masterbooks has this opportunity to offer something so unique to the students and the families, to have something like astrophysics. We're not talking about just astronomy, which we have several courses for that. We're talking about astrophysics. So let's talk about, like, what does it mean to study astrophysics and from a biblical worldview? That's where we're unique. I'm sure there's some courses out there for it.
Yeah, this is a high school textbook. It's intended for, say, freshman to senior level students. It's not real intensive in math, so I think most high school students can take it. The title can be a little off-putting. Introduction to Astrophysics sounds much more technical than astronomy is, but there's not a whole lot of difference between astronomy and astrophysics today. It's an interesting story about how that alternate term astrophysics came about in the late 19th century. But the textbook takes a biblical worldview and integrates the biblical principles and references throughout. I think it's important to get a good grounding in this. We live in in a very modern age with a lot of astronomy, a lot of space things going on, and yet students, for the most part, most people have very little understand, a little teaching in their background. The only time I formally studied astronomy growing up was in 6th grade. We did a unit on astronomy, and that was it. And that's typical for a lot of people, because if there's an astronomy unit in your science, it's usually towards the end of the book, and you don't finish the textbook. And I like to jokingly tell people, well, you're going through life with a 6th grade understanding of astronomy. And Jethro Bodine, remember the dim-witted nephew of Jed Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies? He had a 6th grade education. Are you any better than Jethro?
When it comes to this topic.
Yeah. So I think people are appallingly, I hate to use the word ignorant, but they are, of astronomical things. And so I'm trying to, with this textbook, trying to address several things, bring up the knowledge level of people. And of course, I could be accused of bias being an astronomer, but I think astronomy is just a way cool subject. It's fascinating. When you start talking about how far things are and how big things are and how beautiful things are, people just naturally gravitate to that because it's really exciting and relevant today, of course, with the James Webb Space Telescope and things like that. Also, astronomy is mentioned specifically in Psalm 19, declaring God's glory. That's one of the purpose for the heavenly bodies. And those are kind of the themes I really pushed throughout the textbook. I want to add that I actually, writing this was a 20-year process.
Really?
I began writing it more than 2 decades ago. I did volunteer teaching at a local Christian school. It was Carolina Christian Academy in Lancaster, South Carolina. And I taught over the years. I taught physics, chemistry, biology. I even taught government one year. But I usually taught one course at a time. And I started writing this thing, and I printed it up. It was in Word, and I had PowerPoint files and such. that I used, and I taught it 3 times. And going through that, I was able to hone it. I had a few homeschoolers that wanted to do it, and I gave it to them. Said, look, you can use it for your exclusive use. Get back to me with any suggestions or corrections that you have. So it's been test marketed in that sense, and I think it's ideal for homeschoolers and ideal for small Christian schools, or even large ones if they want. I think homeschoolers are innovative people. They do things out of the ordinary, and they're looking for challenges. And very few schools offer a high school astronomy class, a whole year-long class. And so here's an opportunity to innovate and do it right. And I think homeschoolers, once it gets out there, people are really going to like that. And one of the issues I see is that most states now require 3 and even 4 units of science for college admission. And when I was coming down the pike, that wasn't there. Like 1 or 2 units were required, and everybody had to take physical science in 9th grade in the state I grew up in. And most of the people took biology, but then after that, it was chemistry and physics. They were kind of technical, kind of mathematically oriented, and kind of hard. So the numbers dwindled tremendously. Where you had 6 sections of physical science, 5 sections of biology, maybe 2 or 3 of chemistry, and 1 of physics by the senior year. So what do you do when you need 3 or 4 units of science? Do you make everybody take chemistry and physics? Well, if you do, you got to water it down or make 2 different courses. I say, well, let's don't do it that way. Let's keep chemistry and physics difficult and for people who really need chemistry and physics, like people going into science fields and things like that. But for everybody else, and maybe the others as well, why not offer a course, a year-long course that is at the same level, let's say, of freshman, sophomore, like biology and physical science. And that's what my textbook is trying to address. It's not super technical. It's not super mathematical. It's got some math in it, but all the others do. And Jennifer Rivera's book on forensics is the same way. It's the same level. So if you have, say, college-bound students or not, if you want to get 3 or 4 units of science, there's a way to do it without watering down the chemistry and physics and doing that.
I love that. And I was checking our resources on masterbooks.com about it and noticed that there are a couple of requirements that you have under your belt as a high school student before you take it. And that was elementary algebra, which is your first high school algebra, and then either Intro to Astronomy or Survey of Astronomy, all through Master Books. So we're excited to offer something so unique to the student of the Lord and want to know him through science, want to know him through the beauty of the cosmos. And I'm so thankful that you are around to show us through all of your experience. Would this be a course for people that are just going to college, or is this a course that somebody who just is interested in the stars or finds it fascinating and wants a different type of science?
It meets all of those requirements, I think. It's certainly good for college-bound people interested in astronomy. But, even if you're not interested in science that much or interested in astronomy necessarily, there's some really cool things about astronomy. I can't unfathom somebody, well, I don't like astronomy. Well, maybe you don't like science, but why wouldn't you love astronomy?
Right.
And it's really shows God's wonder and beauty. In April, we had another total solar eclipse across the United States. And I've been to totality 3 times now. And to me, it is the most incredible thing I have ever experienced. I've seen a lot of neat things, but nothing compares to a totality. It's just a moving experience. You have to experience it, not see it, but experience it to understand what I am saying. And when I look up there and I see this, it tells me what an artist that the Lord is. But on the other hand, when you start looking at some of the circumstances that cause an eclipse, so the sun being 400 times larger than the moon, but 400 times farther away, so they just compensate in size, and so the sun and the moon appear the same size in the sky, and this moon just barely covers up the sun, producing very rare but spectacular total solar eclipses. It tells me God is an engineer, superb engineer, superb artist. And I've known artists and I've known engineers, but I've not known anybody who did both of those very well. And that tells you how much greater God is than we are. He can do both superbly at the same time. And that's to me, catching the wonder and the beauty around us. By the way, particularly in the teacher's edition, I have hints of it in the book, but in the teacher's edition, I have some suggestions of observing projects,
Okay.
which would count as a lab sort of thing. It's not a formal lab. We go in once a week and do something in the lab. You're not even in a lab. The lab is the whole universe around you. But looking at things like time of sunrise and sunset, direction of sunrise and sunset throughout the year, looking at the phase of the moon and noting the position, how it changes throughout the month, and also checking the length of a shadow at noon throughout months. You need to do this over many months, not just one time you're done. And if you do these faithfully, then you will have, in the course of the 8 or 9 months you're doing astronomy, if you do these observing projects, you will have a full lab component to the whole thing. And I have been working on it off and on. I need to finish it up and get it to you all, but I'm working on a like a lab manual to do it. We could do it online or print. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but this would kind of help you out. I talk about how to do that in the teacher's edition, but this would be giving a little with lab sheets and stuff you can record your data on.
Okay.
So usually you should have a lab component in it, and if you follow those things about doing the year-long observing projects, you can do that. And that's the neat thing about doing these things. You can read about astronomy, and it's just a book learning thing. But until you go outside and see these for yourself, it doesn't really come alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is important. I want to get people out and doing these things, looking at these things rather than just reading about them.
Well, I think it is fabulous to think about Christian students being able to go to college or go in the workforce or have conversations with people and have this information on the inside of them to honor God. And it's just such a unique opportunity to have taken this course and have it on your resume, your transcript. Anyway, I just think that it could set students apart. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you about, you were mentioning the teacher's guide. So is this something that a homeschool mom or dad would need to be very involved with their student in studying? Can it be more of an independent study? How deep is it?
Yeah, like most independent studies, it depends on the student. Some students need to crack the whip and keep on them the whole time. But if you have a motivated student, this course will work very well doing independent study. And I've had said several homeschoolers have test marketed for me in various forms before I got it published. And the students were working on themselves, being supervised by the parents. So it does lend itself very well to independent study.
Great. Well, I know that will be a great piece of information for the parents who are helping their student decide. And again, with masterbooks, we really love giving multiple opportunities in the science field so that your student can take things they're interested in, and that will help them enjoy it more, help them learn better. And so if your student is interested in astronomy, astrophysics, this is the course, and we're so thankful to have Dr. Danny Faulkner to show us how to study it, how to know God this way.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for creating this curriculum, sharing it with the Masterbooks families. And I know you've got a big trip coming up. I hope that it is wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.